everyone. Today on What's My Frame, I'm chatting with Anthony Boyer, agent and head of the theatrical division at DDO Artists Agency. After building a successful career as a music director and conductor, Anthony transitioned his career to the representation world in 2007. He worked his way through the ranks until taking on the monumental challenge of opening the West Coast theatrical division of DDO in 2013. Anthony works with his tightly woven team of theatrical agents in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles to create opportunities for their clients in television, film, and theater. Among his clients are Tony Award winners and nominees, heads of large touring companies, series regulars, and high-profile film actors. Anthony is a rare gem in the representation world, working to instill a culture at DDO that is consistently pushing to amplify unheard voices and to teach actors to self-advocate and to tell their unique stories. Please join me in welcoming the exceptional Anthony Boyer. Hey Anthony, thank you so much for joining us on What's My Frame.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Can you start us off with a little of your story from starting in the industry and becoming the director of the theatrical division at DDO?
Yeah, so I started off actually as a musician. My degree's in music theory and composition. I spent like 12 years working professionally as a music director, conductor, arranger, orchestrator, whatever anyone would pay me to do musically. And I hit a point where I was living, on the East Coast, and I was doing moderately well. I was making some moves, and I just realized that I just didn't love it. I had been doing it for so long because I was good at it, and I had had momentum, but I realized that it was just not what I wanted to be doing. So I moved west first to San Diego for 2 years without any real idea of what I was going to do. And I spent 2 years in San Diego kind of figuring my life out, figuring myself out, because I had been on a professional track for so long. And I realized that I really did like the entertainment industry, and I wanted to find a way back in. So by that time, enough of my friends from New York had moved to Los Angeles, and people were basically calling and offering me work. So I moved up here to LA in 2007. And immediately needed a job and found one at a talent agency. And I really loved the world. I was just a part-time bookkeeper there, but I found that I really enjoyed the work. I really enjoyed a lot of what went into the process of sort of putting actors in a position to look and sound their best, connecting them with buyers, with people who could pay them to do their craft. And so I really just kind of hung out in that world for a while. I started as an assistant. I got a job as an assistant at another talent agency called Stage 9 Talent. I was there for about 4 years, and I sort of outgrew what they were doing. I really built the department up. I was kind of running the place near the end, and I needed a challenge. And around that time, the owners of that company actually were looking to sell the agency. So they sold it to DDO Artists Agency, who at that time did not have a West Coast theatrical branch. So they basically bought me and my roster and brought me over and said, here you go. And so in November of 2013, November 11th, 2013, we started this department. So we're whatever that is, 6.5 years in now. And we've really grown. We've done really well for ourselves. We have offices in Chicago and New York. The New York office predates my time there, but one of the things we've been really good at is sort of working in between the offices and figuring that out and having like one unified direction. But every year, well, who knows about 2020, but every year we've gotten a little bit bigger and a little bit better and had more and more good stuff. So far so good.
Was that enough of a challenge for you to go in and be able to basically start a theatrical division?
Yeah, you might be surprised to find out that's incredibly difficult. So
Had a
it,
slight feeling.
yeah, it's a challenge every day, and it's a very humbling job because people are looking to you for advice all the time, and you realize that any answer you have changes really really rapidly, and so I like to think of myself as a very smart person, and I really I work very hard, and so it's very interesting to see A, just how quickly things change, and B, how slowly sometimes things change. So it really is a haul, it really is a grind, and it's, who knows if any of us will ever achieve mastery, but it's been a very humbling experience for sure.
Yeah, the finish line is always moving just a little bit further out.
Yeah.
Now, like we said, you're at DDO, which is a very hands-on and respected agency. You guys are growing each year. Can you give us a little behind the scenes of how the department works together on like a normal day, pre or post COVID, what that looks like?
Yeah, so I've got a team that works under me. It's one right now. It's one other agent in Los Angeles, and we have an assistant that we share. And then there's the Chicago office and the New York office. So they're independent entities, but we do work very hand in hand. One thing that is unique to our department is that we are also really aggressive about theater. So that's just sort of a side thing. But I handle TV, film, and theater. We have had clients on Broadway, clients on national tours. Like that's something that's very important to us. So as far as we go, it's on the TV side, TV and film side, the other agent and I split basically by show. So we don't have, the reason is I worked very hard to build, when I was a one-man shop, to build all of my contacts, to build, really strong relationships around town. And the other agent in my department, Danielle Smith, she did the same. She's bounced around for a while, and she's, really built strong relationships. So we didn't want those to atrophy by when we teamed up. We didn't necessarily want we didn't want all that hard work to go away, because it's like, well, now I just don't cover, Gail Pillsbury. So to us, it made sense to just do a show split. So I will cover 2 Gale shows and she will cover 2 Gale shows or whatever, so that we are continually working those relationships. So because of that, and because we work off of one list, we don't have separate lists. So we're very communicative. We are in the same office. We talk all day long. There is some sort of like trade-off back and forth on who does what as far as like client maintenance goes. Like Danielle is just so good at headshots. Like she can do headshots 10 times faster than I can. Like it's just, she used her background is as a photographer, like there's just a lot there that I'm like, I could do it. But yeah. But I'm always like, even with my assistant, I'm like, okay, get it down to like 20 shots and then I'll jump in, because it's like when you're looking at a session of, I can't, it's too many.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then as far as like reels go or tape goes, we both watch every self tape that comes in. We compare notes. We meet every week. We bring in our youth theatrical department on those meetings so that we are as in sync as we can be. Once a month, well, every day I'm talking to our New York and Chicago offices, but once a month specifically, we all kind of get on the phone, we all kind of get on Skype, we all get on something, just so that we can compare notes, know what's going on, know if there are any clients of each other's that we need to be watching out for, because that's really big for us. Is when someone's getting some success in one area, we want to leverage that so that we can build up the other areas.
Yeah.
So for instance, like Joshua Andres Rivera, who was on the Hamilton tour, and then while he was on the Hamilton tour, we got him in for West Side Story, the Steven Spielberg remake, which he booked. He's playing Chino. So then we use that to sort of get a round of general meetings, and then so just like one thing has led to another, to another, to another. But that's just because we're really focused on like lifting up each other's clients as much as possible. So to me, communication is paramount. Like I don't think you can do this job without really all, especially at an agency our size, without really all being on the same page.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, from any actor listening to this that is hearing how cohesive you guys are, they're now making notes of how they want to submit to you after all of this. So what are the key materials that you like to see in a pitch from an actor? What stands out? What is helpful? What is not helpful?
Yeah, so we're fortunate in that we have a really solid roster top to bottom. I mean, we're mostly referral only. I will say the majority of our clients are either referral or people that I've been following for literally years. Like I do a lot of scouting, a lot of scouting. We've got systems built for that. So that said, we do have some success stories, you know, people who submit, and we have a girl who just tested this year. She was a cold submission in October. She just happened to be one, you know, I try to read all of them. Whether I reply or not, I try to read all of them. So I would say the number one thing is like keep it short. Keep it short. It is literally a pitch. So, you know, if you look at, you know, a commercial is 30 seconds, right? Like you're trying to sell a product, you need to do it quickly. You need to get in, get out. You want to build excitement. You want people to want to be a part of this. So I would say lead with like big or recent credits, and like I don't like I don't mind an attached picture and PDF headshot, but like link to a breakdowns account, or, you know, like actors access account. I'm not going to open your Dropbox. I'm not going to open like most links I won't open unless it's like to a site that I know. So I think that's the big thing, is like just have high quality materials. Chances are I'm probably not going to watch a reel on a cold submission, but if I do, I think this is one thing that I have really been stressing lately, is that first 15 to 20 seconds of your reel really has to be rock solid.
Wow.
Like you can't really afford to waste a second anyway, but that first 15 to 20 seconds, that's where you're more or less guaranteed eyeballs. Like those just have to kill.
Yeah. I mean, just going off of that, do you like to see like the old format of like a picture and the name, or do you like to jump right into the content and have like the name at the end?
Yeah, I like to jump right in. I don't think that, I mean, we know who we're watching.
Yeah.
We don't like, I don't think it's necessarily bad. Like if it's, you know, 3 seconds and we're out of the way, but to me, it's like, let's just get in, let's just get to the work, because I know who I'm watching already.
Yeah.
So
I really like how you put that consider it like a commercial, because
yeah.
we at the end of a commercial know whether we're interested in researching a product or finding out more. We should be able to do that with ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't need your life story. Like I can do a tremendous amount of research on my own, and I can ask questions. So like, give me the bullet points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So for actors that are lucky enough to already have representation, what are some key advice that you would give for actors to make their reps jobs easier?
I think for me, it really is communication.
Mhm.
There's a fine line between over communicating and under communicating, and every agent is a little bit different. I always tell my new clients, err on the side of over communicating. I'll tell you if it's too much. I'll filter out what isn't enough. I don't like surprises. Surprises are the worst thing for an agent, because we're working very hard with the understanding that, for instance, that you're available unless you tell us you're not, right? So for us to be working very hard, and maybe we get 5 rejections, we finally get a casting director to say yes, and then you're like, oh, actually, I'm in Europe that week. Like it's like the worst. So
Yeah.
things like, make sure that your profiles are accurate. I mean, if it says you speak fluent German, you got to speak fluent German. I got to be able to put you on an audition in 2 hours without prepping, you know. So those sorts of things I think are really big. I think too, the truth of the matter is, you really have to be doing your networking. You have to be doing your research. You have to know who people are. You have to build your relationships. You have to work your contacts. And when we say networking, I think people get this very sort of itchy feeling about that, because it feels very like schmoozy, but that is not what I mean. What I mean is like literally keeping your relationships up, you
Yeah.
know, meeting people when you can, being authentic, building authentic relationships, and not just, you know, not just walking away from a set without really having made a connection, or not, you know, like it's just those sorts of things where it's like, that's the number one thing you can do. I've got a client, for instance, who has series credits, but he's, you know, in a transitionary phase of his life. But it's been really interesting, because when we sell him to casting directors, he is not necessarily what they remember, because he has changed physically so much. So they think he's one thing, I think he's another. So we get a lot of no's, a lot more than someone of his caliber probably should be getting. But what's great is every showrunner he's ever worked with loves this guy because he's amazing. So 9 times out of 10, we can just put in a call to the showrunner and say, hey, we're having trouble getting him in. Like, what do you think? So it's like those sorts of things where if you don't have those relationships, and listen, I get it, right? If you just haven't had an opportunity to make those relationships, fine, then use the relationships you have been able to make. I think that's the number one thing is in sort of generating your own business, is just knowing that, we're on board, we're here for whatever you need, we can support you, but we can't do all of the heavy lifting.
Right.
There's a reason we make 10%, I suppose, but
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, is like keep in communication, not just with me, but with your network, and like, let's all figure this out.
Sometimes actors forget that their agents are dealing with their own deadlines and stressors. Sometimes we're just so focused on our own auditions, we forget that. What are some things that you wish actors understood about your side of the desk and what you guys are dealing with in getting them auditions, bookings, things like that?
I think one thing that I think, first of all, I think I'm surprised I don't get more actors asking to intern in our office. I've always thought that would be a really informative thing, even just for like a couple of weeks, if you can,
Yeah.
do it. Just get into the office and see what it is. I think the number one thing to understand is that for every audition you get, we've probably gotten 10 to 15 to 25 no's. We are constantly, I forget who said this, but someone recently said to me, like, you're actually auditioning all the time, you just don't know it. And that's the truth of the matter. Like, I'm sending tape, I'm sending materials, and like, that's the audition now. And so it's very interesting. So by the time we even get the appointment, we've probably had a lot of rejection. So I think it's easy to sit at home and your phone isn't necessarily ringing and you're not sure why, and you assume that you're not on your agent's mind. I promise you, you are on your agent's mind. Maybe even more if you're not working, because we take that, like, we take that very personally. Like, we brought you on, we want you to be working. So I think for me, that's number one, is just know that the results you're seeing on your end are not necessarily indicative of the work that your rep is putting in.
Yeah.
That said, I think the other thing to know is, and this is true of everyone, even in this industry and outside, is that just no one has enough time. No one has enough time, and we're really doing the best we can to divvy it up among our clients. So the people who require a little bit more time get it, and the people who are a little more self-sustaining aren't. So I think in that way, I consider it very important to sort of self-advocate. If you need your agent's attention, I think you have to be very direct about that. That's not going to work at every office, but I'm telling you, I think that is important. Like, if you need to speak to your agent, or if you need their time, I can't tell you how many times I've found something out. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Like, why didn't want to bother you? Like, please bother me. Like, we're a team. Like, we're doing this together. It's really important to me that you feel like we're on the same page, because at the end of the day, we really are building something together.
Absolutely. We all have this newfound free time that we're working with. Do you have any projects or advice to promote actors to stay motivated and productive right now? And that can also work into relationship building with casting, things like that.
Yeah, I keep joking that I'm finally down to a 40-hour work week. I feel like I haven't gotten all this extra time everyone else has gotten. I think what's that?
I said, with doing the podcast, I'm like talking
Right.
to actor friends. I'm like, yeah, the self-tape has got to work the first time. That's the only time I got to do it.
Right. That's right. I think that's the thing. I think so. For me, there are things that we can be doing. Okay, so let me start with saying it's okay to not be doing anything. I think that that's really important to say. Like, there's this like push from some people, I'm not putting you in this, but there's a push from some people that you have to be productive. You have to come out of this in a different place. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that, it's a mistake to think that your competition is lapping you because, you're not emotionally capable of being productive right now. So let's start with that. And past that, if you're like, okay, I need something to do, I want to do, here's what I would be doing. First of all, I would be reading as many scripts as possible. I would be reading plays, I would be reading features, I would be reading pilot scripts that I can get a hold of, I would be reading episodic scripts that I can get a hold of. I've been sending some of my clients sides for roles that they didn't get. So like, hey, there's nothing at stake here. Like, just put it down, see what you come up with, like just something to like practice. But I would say even past that, get together with another group of actors and read, and like do a table read. put yourself on tape, go back over old sides see, that you did 3 years ago, see how you would do them differently now. If you've got the time that you usually don't have the time to do, it would be really to like tighten the reel. I think that the reel, and this is sort of a new philosophy of mine, if I'm being honest, I've never been a big reel person, but in some of the conversations I've been having over the last month and a half with my casting friends, I think I'm coming around on like, just really tighten that up. Don't waste any seconds. Get that first 10 to 15 to 20 seconds really tight. Just, and if you don't have the material, you don't have the material. I've always been an advocate of just having really good self tapes also, but it is something that you want to be building towards. So I would say that's one area where you can be putting time and energy and effort, and then just reading and building those networks. Reach out to people, send the emails. One thing, if, for better or worse, is that everyone's seeing your emails now. Like, we're not all just inundated like we used to be, you know what I mean? So like, send it, see what happens.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about social media just a little bit. A lot of actors stress about numbers and following. Do you see that really has a big effect on your clients that are booking? Their numbers, their following, their engagement?
I don't. I think for me, unless you're like one of the top players, unless you're in like the top 5%, unless you have like a million followers, everything else is kind of incidental, right? It's not necessarily going to get a film financing if you have 250,000 followers. It's not necessarily going to increase your exposure. That said, if it is something you can build toward and it's not taking away, I think it's more important to train. It's more important to build network, all that stuff. If it's not taking away from those things, then you might as well put some time into it. It can only help to get a little bit of exposure. If you run into a showrunner on Instagram or something, and now they're obsessed with you, you're like, sure. But I don't think that it needs to be a sort of a single-minded pursuit in the way that some people do it. That said, we've got a client in our youth department who is like a social media superstar, and she now has her own series at Nickelodeon. Like things can happen, but again, that's like the top 1%, right? So if we're not going to be the top 1%, then everything we put into it is like, that's fine. Yeah. But I don't know that it's really generating much. I think it causes more stress than the payoff is worth, in my opinion. That said, I also have a showrunner friend who swears by it. She says it comes up in every conversation they have about casting. So
wow,
take it with a grain of salt. I think, it's different markets are going to react differently. Different networks are going to react differently. So it's something that, again, I would say, like, sure, put some work into it, but don't kill yourself, because again, unless you're in that top 1%, like, sure, they can have all those conversations about it. But if the answer is you're one of the best, or it doesn't count, then are you one of the best? Are you going to be there? And I'm still of the opinion that talent wins out at the end of the day, that the cream rises. So, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. Cream rises. Wait, you said you grew up on the East Coast, is that right?
I grew up in the Midwest.
Oh, okay, Midwest. I was like, that sounds like a Southern saying. I grew up in the South, so whenever I hear something about cream, I'm like, wait, what?
Ohio is very weird. I grew up in Ohio, and it's weird because if you go any farther south, it's the South. It's Kentucky or West Virginia. If you go any farther west, you're in Indiana, which is the Midwest. If you go any farther east, you're in Pennsylvania, which is the East. If you go any farther north, well, you'll drown, but then you'll be in Canada. So, like, it's like the weirdest, like, it's a little bit of everything.
You're a little bit of a landlocked island. Yeah, I grew up in Southern Virginia, where it was like we were judged by the South as not being South, but from the North, we weren't the North.
Oh, right.
We were horse country.
So. You should write a show called South-ish. I think that's exactly the premise.
Oh, I was also homeschooled, so believe me, I have some stories. Great. So what is something that you are reading or watching now and loving?
Something I'm reading, I don't read a lot of fiction. I get yelled at for this. I read a lot of nonfiction.
Reading is reading, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's like it's sort of an interesting thing, but I would rather like increase my skills than, like, I don't know, I don't necessarily need fiction reading. I think because I'm immersed in fiction all day long. As far as what I'm watching, I'm only 2 episodes into Unorthodox, and I'm obsessed with it. It is so, so, so well done. And so like that has been a really interesting thing for me. I'm looking forward to Dead to Me season 2 is coming out May 8th. We have a client recurring on that series. That's a great one. I actually just finished rewatching You season 2 because I liked it so much the first time I rewatched it. And then so that's kind of what I'm watching now. It's not a lot. I'm in sort of a phase where I'm on I don't want to say a fast, but I'm not necessarily diving all the way in. I'm an Emmy voter, so like I've got to roll up my sleeves and jump in there really soon, but I'm sort of putting it off a little bit.
I think everybody's going to be binge watching the nominees here
Absolutely.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Besides helping actors, what is one of your favorite parts of your job?
I mean, that is the big one for sure. I'm going to say I actually really like the people in our industry. I think top to bottom, they are just really good people. They are really genuine people who care about each other, who care about people. And I think that has been probably my favorite part is other agents and managers and casting directors and producers and directors and writers, and it's just like top to bottom. I mean, like 80% of the people I meet in this industry are just really, really cool people. And that I think has been my favorite part is building the relationships. I mean, it's great when we talk about like taking a lunch and it's like this obligation, but every single time that you're like, wait, this is really super enjoyable. And I don't think that's true in like the paper industry, certainly wasn't true in my previous work. But yeah, that I think the people for sure.
Now, there are countless unseen stages in the casting process, unseen by the actors. Could you share a very memorable or just a shooting star lucky opportunity that got a client booked on a job?
Well, okay, so I can. This isn't actually a booking though, so I'm gonna preface this with he didn't actually get the job.
Okay.
But when I had first started my department, I was literally less than a month into having started my department. I was on a camping trip and I had this like aha moment. I was like, wait, what if this person in this, like it just had this, like I had this moment of clarity. And I got into the office that Monday and I called Annie McCarthy. She was casting the film that it was part of. And she was like, okay, yeah, send his stuff over. She really responded very well to his stuff. It was like, and it was a guy who really just didn't have a lot at that time. He works all the time now. But at that time, really didn't have much of a resume. So they really responded to his materials. He fit right into the world. Like it all made sense. And so here's this brand new agent who has not had a department for a month. Here's a client who is not, an actor who has not worked very much. And he actually got all the way to the end. It was one of the films in the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Okay.
Got all the way to the end. He did I think 3 screen tests. Ended up not getting it, but like it was just really this like rags to almost the story where it was just like literally, and I will never forget that Anne answered my phone call. Like that's a big deal. And so I think that's the thing too, as far as like casting and agents go, is just building that relationship and building that trust. Because now she answers all my calls, right? Because of that. But that's the thing, and I think that's an interesting point too, is how many times, like when you get into the room, it affects everyone and everything else after that. So that can be really important. But yeah, that was a really nice one to me. I think the other really cool one that comes to mind is after 3 years of having a client, when I was an assistant, this was again in that first like 6 months, I think, of having opened my own department. I had stuck with this guy for 3 years. The agents didn't want to sign him when I was an assistant. I really fought for him. He was not booking. He had booked one like non-union TV show for like $100, one of those investigation discovery, shows. And so he really was not an earner. But we got him in on a movie, on a big feature. He got fairly close. He got 2 or 3 callbacks. And then that casting director remembered him, called him in for something else. He actually ended up testing for a lead on a big Universal feature. And then like after that, like you could see his confidence growing, but he had still never actually booked anything. So on a Friday, he was non-union. He booked his first ever series regular, and he was on a plane to Austin, Texas to shoot it that Monday. So from non-union, not really having worked for 3 years, to a series regular, and that guy's like kind of borderline a star now. So he works all the time now. But it's that was a really cool story, and I think that's about like just do the work, put in the work. When you get into the room, you may not get that one, but you're really setting it up for future things. So I think that's the lesson there.
Or going off of that, for actors in the co-star guest star space, trying to build relationships with casting and to build that creative community of booking the room, not just booking the role. Do you have any advice for actors of how to start networking and building those relationships?
I think the number one thing is just be authentic. It's you can't go into it again. You can't go into it like schmoozy. Like just approach them as a human being. You will be surprised, first of all, how far ahead that puts you already without anything else involved. Just having that, the fact that people want to see you, want to talk to you, they're not afraid of you. Like that's, shockingly important. But also I think that's the thing. And so you want to use that opportunity to make an impression. You want to use that opportunity to do a lot of things, but you have to like just sort of rein yourself in a little bit. Like just keep it professional. How would you imagine that you are sitting on an opportunity. I think that's important to know too, is like casting doesn't assign the rules, right? They can like best and it doesn't matter. Like their job is to put you in front of, the creatives. So they can't do that if they think that you're going to be like clingy and pushy and needy. So they need you to be a human so that you can represent them.
Yes.
And so that's, I think the thing is just approach that. If you were in a position where you could introduce someone to someone powerful, who would you want to introduce to that person? Your cool friend who's like casual and like keeps it real, or your friend who's like very like pacing the room and like sweaty and like wringing his hands all the time? Like I think if you can just sort of reverse the roles in that context, it can really be very informative. But that to me, I think number one thing is like do the work, prepare, show up on time. And when we talk about branding, I don't want to get too much into this, but I don't really love the way that actors are taught branding, because I think it's kind of from a perspective that's really more about packaging. So for me, the brand you want to build is you want to be loyal, you want to be dependable, you want to show up on time, you want to take direction, you want choices, strong choices. Like to me, that's more of an actor's brand than like I play the cop. So I think to me that's the thing is like just deliver consistent good work, be a human being, and I think you will be shocked at the results.
Amazing. All right, and last question that we ask everyone on the What's My Frame podcast is, what is one thing you wish you could go back and tell your younger self?
Oh boy, what's one thing I wish I could go back and tell my younger self? Just be patient. I think that's the number one thing. Just be patient. Rushed into like deciding a career. I rushed into this, I rushed into that. And I'm finding now, I'm getting a bit older. I'm sort of, reaching my middle age. And I think it's really come clear to me that like a lot of the things that we just stressed out about ended up being so unimportant. And so I think to me, it would be about be patient, do the work. And the other thing would be like really really focus on the relationships, because at the end of the day, that's what everything is about, in life, in business, anywhere, is really just be patient. Results will come. Do the work, build the relationships.
Well, Anthony, I think I speak for everyone listening when I say thank you for taking on that challenge of moving to DDO, and thank you for also investing so much of your insight and experience into this time with us. I really appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening. And to my guest today, Anthony Boyer. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe so you won't miss an episode. And tell a friend. Our goal here at What's My Frame is to encourage, educate, and inspire our creative community. You can also follow us on Instagram at What's My Frame for daily blogs, industry news, and giveaways. I'm Laura Linda Bradley, and this is What's My Frame?